you behind the camera. Welcome everyone. Tonight we've, so you probably know that each presentation we record the meetup, we record the presenter and we store it on our archives. Well, today we're streaming live on Twitch, so this is the first time, and you notice Kim over there doing his magic. So let's get started. So first of all, this is our first meetup for the year. I don't know why Kim put that slide up.
Just to remind you it's the new year.
And first of all, say thanks to our sponsors, so Microsoft providing this facility, and for Spring Professionals who are providing the pizzas, which we shall enjoy. Matthew Robbins. So I'm super excited to have Matthew present to us tonight. Matthew's the Microsoft MVP and the founder and managing director of MFractor. Now, MFractor is a set of tools for XAML, for our Forms XAML, including IntelliSense. So that sort of background, in order to be able to do that, you must know a lot about how Forms works, and he probably knows, on the XAML side, probably knows more than a lot of the developers of Forms, or at least as much as they do. So he's ideal to do a presentation of Forms 4.0 because a lot of that is for the UI. But that's not the only reason why I personally admire Matthew. If anyone out there, if you've got your own product, and it's a great product like MFractor, one thing you'll know is that the product doesn't pay the bills. You have to actually sell it. And what Matthew's doing is selling MFractor using social media. And if you've ever tried that, it is not easy. It's relentless, it's hard work, and if any of you have got kids, it's worse. Matthew does that. He sells it here in Australia and overseas, and I personally applaud him for that. So with no further ado, I'll hand over to Matthew.
That's right. So I'm just getting my notes ready. We may do with phone locking or just free format. Alrighty. Thanks for your kind words, Rod. Yeah, very nice to hear. Hi everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm here tonight to talk about Xamarin.Forms 4. So specifically a couple of features that I think are really, really cool. And they'll be pretty amazing once they're out and about in the wild. Thanks Kim, thanks Rod, thanks Microsoft for having me. It's good to be here, and thanks for coming as well. Quickly, a little bit about me. It's kind of already been covered, but it's in the slides. So my name is Matthew Robbins. I've been working with Xamarin since 2012. So if you know the history of Xamarin, that's almost the start of it. So I've been involved in the community quite a long time now. I'm a Microsoft MVP, and I'm the creator of MFractor. So that's incredible Xamarin tools for Visual Studio for Mac. So if you work in Xamarin using Visual Studio for Mac, grab MFractor, it'll help you out a lot. I'll explain it to you later though, as I'm talking about Xamarin.Forms 4. So there's really three main features tonight that I want to talk about. There's a lot more than 3 features in Xamarin.Forms 4, but I think these are the most interesting ones. The first one is shell. So shell is a way for you to declare your navigation hierarchy using XAML. You could do it in C#, but my recommendation would be XAML, and I'll go into those reasons a bit later. Next, I'll talk about CollectionView. So this is the successor to ListView. So ListView is getting a bit of a modernization with CollectionView. CollectionView supports a lot of really, really cool things. Again, we'll go into that in a second. And the last one, it's a small feature, but it's a really, really powerful one. And that's the FontImageSource. So this is the ability to, given a font family and a character code, you render that into a bitmap. It's a small thing, but it has a lot of power and can save a lot of time and headaches. All right, so first off, shell. Simply put, shell is an easy way to declare a navigation hierarchy. So you declare a shell file, and the way you lay out items in that shell file, it dictates how Xamarin.Forms will structure your application. So basically, Xamarin.Forms is now including an engine that interprets what you provide to it and then generates different navigation hierarchies for you. So you can easily define a one-page app, a bottom-page app, top tabs, a mixture of top and bottom tabs, a flyout, or any combination thereof. So it's a very, very powerful new feature.
Can you dynamically build it?
Yes.
No,
Yeah.
it's based on data to then build
Yeah, you can.
the shell.
It also supports data binding, which I'm going to go into later. So it's cool. This is what shell looks like. So you start off with a top-level shell element. Then you have three different items, so three different data structures that define the various UI concepts. So you start off with a shell item. That's more or less either a flyout menu or a one-page app. Inside shell items, you have shell sections, and inside shell sections, you have shell contents. So the various nesting and the amount of items you define here, that dictates what the app's going to look like. However, they are changing this API, I believe. So rather than having shell section, shell content, and shell item, everything will just be item probably in the future. So instead of mixing and matching those different concepts and having to remember how to structure them, it's just a matter of item nesting. So one item at the top level would be a one-page app. Two items at the top level, I believe, would be a flyout menu. One item with two items inside of it would just turn into bottom tabs, so on and so forth. I'll go into a demo of that a bit later. Another really, really neat thing that shell supports is URL navigation. So this is out of the box, much like a framework, say, Prism supports. So on your shell, you define a route host, and a scheme. So this is the infrastructure that you'd use for deep linking, for instance. So if I can't remember what the files are called, but you define a file in your server for Android and iOS that has a route scheme and route host. That's what these items are for. And through this, you can build up a URL to any page in your app, and then go to async on the shell, and it will route to it. So in this example, we have repeater, pages, and sports. So based on our previous route scheme and route host, we can navigate to this page using app www.myapp/main repeater pages sports. You can also omit the app component or the www.myapp.com. So you can just do absolute layouts. Absolute URLs. So you could do, for instance, /main repeater pages sports. You could exclude the app component and have the www main repeater. Basically, any part of your app now can get deep linked, and it's very, very simple. If you've ever written a deep linking engine that takes a URL and routes to a page and generates the navigation hierarchy, it's a bit of a pain in the ass, and it's easy to get wrong. And guys like the people behind Prism, I don't know how they do it, because it's freaking hard work. I've stuffed it up many times over the years, so I'm very happy now knowing I have to write one of these ever again. In terms of usage, so I spoke about this before, you just do shell, go to async, and it figures it out from there. And there's a really, really cool thing you can do. You can add URL arguments to it, and shell will deserialize those and automatically apply them onto your page or view model. So they're the different types of navigation that's supported. Okay, so URL argument injection. So on the previous pages, on the previous slides, I defined a source equal to something. Using this query property attribute, I can declare that the source property maps to the source URL argument. And when I use the go to async, Xamarin.Forms will unwrap that, deserialize it, and then automatically apply it onto my, my page. It's also supported for view models, so the binding context. So I could use these same query properties on my repeater example view model. And they'll just get applied automatically when the app starts. So a good example of this, like where this would be useful, is say you have a deep link with, like you're building a recruitment CRM and you have a job application ID or a candidate name. You could do query property candidate name, and then from the deep link, it would automatically deserialize that and put it onto your view model, kind of saving you the work of having to figure it out. So it's quite useful. One of the really nice things that Shell allows, because you can declare your XAML, your navigation structure in XAML, you then get access to data binding. So it's very, very easy to white label your applications now. So here I'm using dynamic resources to control the title and the color of the application, which I can then change at the flick of a switch inside my app.xaml. So this is the same app, just slightly different usage of dynamic resources. So it's completely rebranded, so to speak. And because Shell inherits from bindable object, you can make basically a view model for your entire app navigation hierarchy. So one of the cool things that this allows is you can completely include or exclude parts of your application. So say you're an admin user and you only want options allowed for admin, you can do data binding to toggle the visibility of this. So I have isAdmin, and I have a shell item for options. And just by data binding to the isAdmin flag, I can turn off and on sections of the application. So it just really cleans code up and makes things a lot easier to use. I'll go into the demo a bit later. So in summary, there's a whole bunch of benefits that we get from Shell. So easily defining our navigation hierarchy. The navigation hierarchy becomes bindable, so you can make a view model for your app shell. You get URL navigation for free, and URL argument injection for free, and also deep link support for free. So lots of complex problems that are tricky to solve are just there for free now. Unfortunately, it's still very early days for Shell. I think it's a couple of months off. I don't probably build is my guess when it's going to be released. But because it's a complete change in how you define navigation hierarchy instead of C# using XAML, and they're completely different concepts, I can't see it being easy to retrofit onto an existing app. You'd need to do a lot of refactoring to get the benefits of this on a existing application. At the moment, the API surface is probably going to change as well. So those shell sections and shell items, I'm expecting they'll probably go, and I'll just go to item. So this entire demo app that I've written will probably be invalid in terms of like the actual syntax in about 6 weeks, 2 months, which sucks. It's also a little bit buggy. Yeah. As I was building my demo application, I felt like I was QAing this because it just found so many little problems. Basically, don't use it just yet. But like, have a play with it. Just don't use it in production.
Can you combine the shell with a more traditional approach in the same app, or is it either or?
No. So a shell is just a page.
Yeah.
So when you apply shell, you set your main page to the new shell. So something that I was doing, experimenting, for instance, I had a login page that I set to the main page. And then on login, I just changed the main page to an app shell. Yep. So yeah, you can like completely mix and match it if you want, and do like modal pushes and.
Okay, another question.
Hit me.
Is it does it use compiled XAML? Like, does it take that XAML that you
Yep.
create and then IL it out?
Yep.
It does.
Yeah. So no inflation if you don't want it, which is good because it's like 20 times faster.
If you want to make it orientation aware, portrait versus landscape.
I haven't tried that, so I couldn't tell you, but I'm sure you could. Because it's data, like you can data bind to it and respond to like events like that. Yeah, I would say that you could definitely do that. Yeah. Okay, so next up is CollectionView. This is our lovely successor to ListView. So a ton of really, really cool things here. So CollectionView gives you grid and ListView styles. It gives you snap points. It gives you horizontal and vertical scrolling. It gives you empty item handling for free. It just really simplifies the whole managing, whole management of a list basically. So we'll go to that demo a bit later. So this is an example of the collection view. It looks fairly similar to a list view in that it has an item source. So I'm just data binding to a list of items here. It has a new concept called an items layout. So this property we use to specify if we have a grid or a list, or if we have a horizontal grid, horizontal list, if we have snap points enabled, if grid's enabled, how many columns do we want or rows do we want. Basically, this controls on first run what the collection view is going to do. Importantly, me doing a data binding here, it's not supported yet, but I believe that you will eventually be able to change this at runtime, so you could change the list view into a grid that scrolls sideways. That's a bug I reported with them. We have the normal item template, so data template. You'll notice here that I don't have a view cell. So the concept of view cells for a collection view at least is being deprecated. So there's no need to have that other level of abstraction. Actually, if you have a view cell here, your app will crash. Again, another thing that I reported to them. And lastly, we have the empty view. So if our items up here is null or empty, so there's no items in the list, it will display this for us instead, which is super cool because this stuff is tricky to write. It's a lot more code than you need. So an example of this is how I would usually do empty list handling. Welcome to code review here. I'd love to know how I can do this better. For starters, lots of unnecessary grid and columns. So I would define like a top level view structure, so a grid, so a layout type. You have the list view and then some kind of empty placeholder view. And then you need to have a form of data binding to turn on the visibility of each element based on a condition if the list has items. So first of all, the code's just brittle because you have another layout container that you need to maintain. We have a data binding for visibility that we have to maintain. Another data binding for visibility with a value converter. So there's just like tons and tons of code here. With the collection view, it just squashes all down and nicely goes into, this is our list and this is what should happen if nothing exists. So it's just much less code we have to maintain now. So some of the benefits of the collection view, automatic empty view, which is really cool. Simpler XAML usage, and because of this, it's got a better API surface, so less stuff we have to think about when we're working. It has snap points. You can do grids and lists, and horizontal and vertical scrolling. Unfortunately, because it's still so early, there's a couple of things that they haven't quite ironed out yet. There's no pull to refresh just yet, so I believe they're probably adding this. There's no header, so there's no grouping support, so you can't do a list of lists and then group them under headings. So that's something that I've used a couple of times in a ListView that I would miss. And there's no header or footer support at the moment. So if you want, say, a top element to scroll out of the top of the list when you scroll, or a bottom footer to do the same thing, it doesn't exist yet. It also has some stability issues because it's still a very, very early control. On the note of CollectionView, this is a Xamarin.Forms 3.5 feature that just came out. And this is a repeater view. So basically we take a stack layout, we give it a list of items, and it just repeats a single control multiple times. So this is very, very useful. Rather than having to do like a for each loop in code behind and manually construct, adding each element to the stack layout, we can define a zoom in bindable layout item source, and then a bindable layout item template, and then the data template we want to display, and it will just repeat that same view for how many items we have. So it's quite useful. Next up is FontImageSource. Basically, FontImageSource is the ability to easily use glyph icons or font icons in your application. The main usage of this for the moment, at least that I've experienced, is say you have a system icon, so a flyout menu icon or a bottom navigation bar icon. If you use a usual image, you need to know the size of that image. So for iOS, I think it's like 96. I have no idea for Android. So if you have an image that's 128, it'll overlap and overflow the bounds of your tab or your flyout. So because FontImageSource takes a font and renders it into a bitmap and then puts it in line, you no longer need to know the size of what you're working with. So you just give it a font icon and a font family, and it renders it straight to a bitmap. So it takes out a whole bunch of work from designers. So they no longer need to export icon codes. They no longer need to export images in different sizes. You no longer need to figure out if the image size is correct. It just takes out a whole bunch of maintenance problems. Yeah. So anyway, this is an example of how to use it. So this shell item icon, that takes an image source. We define a new font image source with a font family. So in my case, I'm using FontAwesome Pro Solid. And we direct it to an icon code. So I have a static class with all the character codes of FontAwesome here. And it will just render it into an image for me. So very, very easy.
And you can use that anywhere there's an image?
Yep.
So in the toolbar item is
yep.
where I'm after it.
Yeah,
awesome.
So just super handy. So can you spot the difference and find the one that's not a font icon?
Yes.
So that's the font icon, and that's a normal icon. So it's subtle, but like in this example, I've probably missed it by maybe 5 pixels, 6 pixels, but it's enough for it to just look pretty crap, to be honest.
Where do you get the fonts from?
Anywhere. So a good place would be Google Fonts. So it's just like a OTF or TTF file.
Okay. And when you deploy, do they become resources?
Yeah, you add it into your application into assets in Android, resources in iOS. I've actually just written tooling for this, so it's all here still. Yeah, so I would have to go and grab the @3x, @2x, @1x, all the Android variants and resize them, recolor them. That's a shitload of work to fix. Whereas having the font image source, it just picks up the color that I want. It automatically resizes itself. It just works. So it saves so much time. Yeah. I think this is one of the coolest features of Xamarin.Forms 4. I was going to write something else there, but I've forgotten. Yeah, so benefits is the ability to use a font and an icon code as an image source. However, there are some drawbacks to it. So I wouldn't use it for everything. I would opt for label with the font family, just because I know that's faster. There's a runtime cost of taking that image, so of taking that icon code in the font and rendering it to a bitmap. So if you can use a label with a font family, I would opt for that. This is only for specific use cases, I would say, but the use cases that it's for save you heaps and heaps of time and effort. So I'm going to jump into a demo now. Feel free to ask me questions while I'm in it. Alrighty. Is that big enough? Is that big enough? So this is my shell file. Stop debugging. I'll collapse it down a little bit as well. Just dig into it. So I start off with a shell. So shell, if you're looking carefully, that derives from a page, so you can use that anywhere. You instantiate shell and then assign it to your page, to your main page like you would anything else. The advantage is that Xamarin.Forms will then take all of the shell items, the shell contents, and figure out what the layout hierarchy will look like. So in my case, if I start this up, this is my app. Actually, you know what? Oh, this is probably going to be a bit easier to work with if I do this. So first part, top tabs. So I have a shell item with a single shell section. And in that shell section, I have multiple shell contents. So that defines a new flag option. So if I pull this open, so we have repeater examples. The shell section just refers to a page component. So that if I had multiple shell sections, it would create bottom tabs. And then I've got multiple shell contents inside that shell section. And as a result, I get top tabs. Yeah. So if I wanted to add new pages or transfer this into being bottom tabs, I could just see if this works. It doesn't matter. So when I restart this, we should have bottom tabs now.
There's a question from the internet.
Oh.
The question is, do top tabs translate to both iOS and Android the same?
Yep.
They do?
They do. Yeah, so I don't have any icons, but now I've refactored that page into bottom tabs in 30 seconds. So if you've got a fussy client who changes their mind between flyout, bottom tabs, top tabs, it's very, very easy to appease them. I know one of my clients at the moment constantly changes their mind. I love them to death, but they just can't decide. So just much, much simpler to work with. Now you notice this next part here with shell. Oh, sorry.
Does shell have any page events? Like if you want to do something after the navigation has been...
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So, oh, okay. So the question was, does shell have page events? So callbacks between page transitions?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it does. There's two that we can tie into. It's navigated and navigating. So I'll just make... Thankfully, I've got a tool that generates that code for me.
What a tool it is.
I know, right? Yeah, so we can hook into here. So E, and then connect into the page. Like, so we can connect into the events and cancel it if you want to. I did give some feedback to the Xamarin team about this. There's some missing API services here, so there's no easy way to access the page. At least that I can't see one.
And what about things like, do we get a callback after the navigation? Like if it's a tab, after the tab is constructed, do we have any callback to this?
I don't know. I haven't looked into it. It's a good question. Yeah. Not to my knowledge. So I just keep on continuing down. So because we're using XAML, we can block out entire components. So you see here I've got this navigation, collection view navigation. So this maps to this entire section of the application. So I've defined an entire shell item with top and bottom tabs that I can then reuse throughout the application. So I say, like, a good example of this is if I'm a third-party vendor who wants to give you some kind of configuration screen or a whole application section, they can bundle this using shell item, or it'll be item eventually. So you can just ship a whole part of your application that comes with like top tabs and bottom tabs that you can then plug into your navigation hierarchy, just like that. So yeah, you can get very, very clean code using shell. So I'll go into the collection view. So this is an example of collection view. So this is a horizontal scrolling list, horizontal scrolling grid with 2 points. This is a vertical scrolling grid with 2 columns. A horizontal list and a vertical list. And this one has snap points enabled. So you see as I scroll, say, halfway to basketball, it jumps into the next cell for me. And this one has no items, so we have an automatic empty collection view, which is cool.
Does it support a data template selector?
It does support a data template selector.
Right.
Yeah, just without the view cell API service.
So, have you played around with including collection inside of other things like ListView and
I would say
scroll view, or
I would say the same rules apply, like the same best practices, where because the collection view is scrollable, you wouldn't put it inside another scrollable container.
but you may want a horizontal scrollable
Mm-hmm.
in a vertical.
Yeah, I haven't played around with it. No. There is carousel view, which comes out in Xamarin.Forms 4 as well, so you might be able to use that. Like that might be a better fit, possibly. So this is a URL navigation demo. So I can route into different sections of my application here. So I could open up repeater just by pressing navigate. It's taking me into the repeater. You can go into options. So just very, very nice. On the note of white labeling, so this is my page for doing dynamic brand changes. So if I just like press change brand, it'll restyle the whole application for me. And that's all set up using dynamic resources just here.
So back to the previous one, the URI navigation. Is that identical to the Prism navigation?
I haven't compared.
So I guess, so the string comparison, the screen navigation
Mhm.
looks exactly the same. But what about passing parameters into a new page?
I haven't compared it enough to know.
But it has that capability.
It has, yeah. So I could need to figure out which page is taking query properties. Okay, so I could, for instance, go to, so this will go into the collection view. Just need to figure out the route. So collection. List vertical. Just see what it is at the moment. So that's taking sports. So I'll make that take. So that's using the URL. That's using the injection. So just
Can you show the code that handles that?
Pardon?
Can you show the code that handles that? Where the argument comes in?
Yeah, sure. So if I go into CollectionView, I have this query property source, and it's mapping the property name to a URL argument. So I could change this to like Flash and re-enable it. Basically, all it's doing under the hood is it uses reflection to grab the properties, and I think it passes in a dictionary of property or URL argument names for values, and then just use property info.setValue. Has a bug at the moment though, in that, yeah, someone missed allow multiple equals true.
Oh.
But I fixed it. That's my first ever pull request to Xamarin.Forms.
Nice.
So I'm a contributor. Right, let's try this again. So it's this vertical. What do you rename it to? Flash. So just super useful. And we could go back into this URL navigation and convert it to an absolute navigation. So same effect. Yeah. Lots of demos there. I won't go into it.
So I don't. How does it know that there's a master detail with a slider on that URL? How does it know that you just navigated to a master detail page? Oh, main is a master detail.
Yeah. So main, just to follow through the logic here. So we have on the top level shell, the route is main. Then the next part is collection. So on the navigation, so collection view navigation, we have another route for collection. Then we have list vertical. So it will find this element. Oh, sorry, next one, this one. List vertical. So that's how it will figure it out.
And how does it know whether it's a modal or non-modal page?
I didn't get that far in. Yeah.
Can you
Yeah, Levin?
any sort of data into the query parameter or into the listings?
Can I pass any kind of data into the parameter? I believe so, yeah. So I think it uses deserialization. So you can do, I haven't tried with objects yet. It's a good thing to test out actually. Yeah, so I'll just jump back into slides. Any other questions?
One question for the connection view. Do you have the, like currently we have the empty view status. Like do you have other status like the internet connection is not connected or something like this?
So if we can have like an empty view and then also other view types for like internet connections unstable. No, it's just the use case of I have items or I don't have items. So if you wanted to do internet connections unstable, you could either modify the empty view if there's no items, or you'd need to go back to that first case, the first example that I showed you, having an outer layout with two different states. Yeah, I think that the collection view would definitely simplify you writing that anyway. Where are we? All right, so a couple of the other features in Xamarin.Forms 4. A carousel view, so that's a horizontal scrolling collection view. So if you've used any of the old components, I think there's one by Xamarin and one by one of the community members. This supersedes that, and it's an official component. So that's really, really good news. The next major feature is visual. So this is the ability to make your Android app and your iOS app look exactly the same. So kind of like Flutter, basically. So a common case for this would be you want your iOS app to have a material theme. Xamarin.Forms would be shipping a material visual style. So it's just a matter of applying visual material on your app start, and the apps will look the same. Another thing, which I guess, I'm not sure if it's a feature or just lots of little fixes, F100. So this is a community-led effort to just fix a lot of the little paper cuts. So this is things like, I'm just going to find my slide here. Disabling spell check in a text editor, turning off text prediction, just lots of little things on lots of the controls that by themselves is just kind of annoying, but in a huge collection, so there's a lot of things that are fixed, they get quite frustrating. So they fixed tons of these little problems, and this is stuff you normally write a renderer for or an effect for, and now it's just part of the API, which is quite cool.
GIF support, does it do animated GIFs?
I don't know, hopefully. Or
Let's try it.
That's incoming soon. But yeah, that's what it is. I've been following that card on GitHub. Everyone wants animated GIFs, and then I can take FF image loading or Lottie out.
Yep, that'd be cool. It's like a good 2 meg out of your app size.
That's how big your GIF is.
I was talking about the NuGet. And lastly, Xamarin Essentials. So if you've used any of James Montemagno's many plugins, Xamarin Essentials is combining all of that into one API, or one NuGet package. It's just static APIs. So if you like things like inversion control and dependency injection, I believe Ryan Davis from Brisbane wrote an interface layer around that. But regardless, Xamarin Essentials is very, very useful to not have 25 different NuGet libraries anymore. It's just one. In terms,
Is it a part of Xamarin.Forms or it's a separate NuGet?
It's a separate NuGet. So there's Xamarin.Forms for the UI, and then Xamarin Essentials for the interaction with the device.
So Xamarin Essentials is available right now though.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I think they're kind of branding it and bundling it under the same release, but it's already available. It's stable. So in terms of what it does, so Xamarin Essentials gives you things like cross-platform APIs for accelerometer, clipboard, browser, phone dialer. So I think I've written an interface and a platform-specific implementation for almost every one of those over the last 7 years. So thank you, James. Thank you so much. I think the biggest thing to take away, apart from it being these features being really, really cool and very, very useful, is that it's not production ready yet. So don't use it in your apps just yet. Apart from Xamarin Essentials. Hey. So this is my testing run. So I basically just got David Orton now, who's one of the program managers, and just hammered him with bug reports. So just.
He must love you. Like in a good
I'm
way.
not sure.
In a good way, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. I felt bad because I did this rather than giving him proper bug reports, and I know like it drives me insane when I don't get proper bug reports, but I just didn't have time to do it properly. But basically, there's just tons of very like small, annoying issues that they need to fix before shipping it. Basically, yeah, like this is a classic example, not being able to use multiple query properties on a class, and that was just a small code change, which I did. So key takeaways, shell gives you the ability to easily define your navigation hierarchy. CollectionView, flexible successor to ListView, and the font image source is an ability to rasterize font icons into images. So yeah, any questions? Yep.
So the shell was defined in XAML.
Yep.
At the compile time. Is it possible to read it at the runtime, let's say from the backend and load into the application?
It's a good question. So the question was, is it possible to read a shell XAML at runtime and like programmatically load it? Yeah. I don't know, but I would guess it would be, because you can usually inflate XAML at runtime. So in theory, yes. In practice, I haven't done it.
When do you reckon the bugs are going to get fixed?
I'm going to guess build, so May. That's my completely out of the blue, making heaps of assumptions, probably May.
Has anyone, I'll answer the question first. We put 4.0 in today, just to build an existing app, because we wanted the CollectionView feature, and it just threw out huge number of bugs, huge number of errors.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, and there were little things, little syntactical problems in our XAML, so maybe our XAML wasn't perfectly defined, but it worked on the last version, so we very quickly took it out.
Yeah.
Anyone else tried to put it in other than Matthew? 4.0?
Yeah, I put it in and it's working great. But I upgraded to the 3.5 in one of my other apps last week, and it gave me 96 errors. But that was just a namespace conflict of Xamarin.Forms 3.5 now has routing built in, and I had something all throughout my app called routing, so I had to go through and put explicit references everywhere.
Did you keep your 4.0? Is it still running? You still using 4.0?
Yeah, I haven't got anything on 4.0 in the App Store yet, but yeah, I've kept it and developing on it. And yeah, ripped out the old bottom tab controller to use shell.
Oh, nice. So you're actually using it?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Sweet. Just like an example of some of the bugs, so collection view, and then I go to animals, and done. that shouldn't be there. Or I have no items, and I go to something. Yeah, I don't even know what that is, but
Seeing that thing behind it looks so much like if I'd done a bad job of using another view.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, should do that. Yeah, that's just two examples of some of the like small and not so small bugs that mean I wouldn't use it. Yeah.
Any more questions? It better be because Glyph is having a lot.
Yep. So the question was, what's the underlying technology? I don't know. Do you want to find out? Let's go on an adventure. Let's find out.
I think performance is one of the key things as well. You know, that was what was making the list view a little sad.
Yeah, and you definitely have to fight the list view to get good performance. GitHub. Forms. Yeah, that'll do. I'm curious. I want to know what it is. So that would be the iOS one. CollectionView renderer. That would be the Android one. Selectable items view renderer. Interesting. Oh, that's right, because these derive from a new parent control called an items view. So there's some magic hierarchy nesting here, or magic inheritance. Items view renderer.
Nice if GitHub had go to implementation on F12.
It'd be, yeah, it's so good. I'm just waiting for the day when it's like tooltips and yeah, it'd be so good. So just the UI view on iOS. That's interesting. And for Android, recycle view. So there you go.
Another question. You played around with Shell, the other framework.
No, I haven't. The reason I didn't do it, I kept finding basically API services that didn't exist that should. So being able to detect the URL and like argument deserialization, or being able to manually change and redirect when you're doing URL navigation. So I don't think the API, like they haven't like quite exposed the callbacks, like for doing things like dependency resolution yet. So that's do it with the shell, or you have, yeah. Yeah, so I didn't test it out because it just felt like it wasn't complete to give it a fair test.
So you're saying that maybe the dependency injection or the way I did the dependency injection won't work.
Possible.
Forms have its own version.
Lack thereof. They don't have a version, and they don't have the API like callbacks to allow Prism MVVM Lite, Fresh MVVM to do it just yet. Yeah, or at least from what I observed and my testing.
So that means that Shell is suitable for new development.
At the moment, they should be expanding out all these callbacks and simplifying some of the data that gets provided to it, so that you can do like automatic view model resolution, doing dependency injection into a constructor, and like giving the fully constructed new object. So it should be possible eventually, just not yet. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? So is top tabs available at the moment? I think it depends on the platform from memory.
Platform specific.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the tab page on iOS is bottom tabs, and the tab page on Android is top tabs.
But you can now choose to go bottom, because it used to be that the tab page would always go one on one and one on the other. But then they added the option to do both bottom.
Yep. Didn't know that.
What about the case where you've got both? You need the tab down the bottom, and you also need an internal scrolling tab. Does Shell actually handle that?
Yeah, Shell handles that just fine.
And that's not available on 3.5.
No. So I'll just revert all these changes and show you. Yeah. Just waiting for it to compile. It should be. This is an example of how you would accomplish that. So I have a shell item which is declaring a flight option, a shell section which, if I did multiple of them, would define bottom tabs, and then shell contents which then define top tabs inside a shell section. Navigation drawer. Yep. I think if they change the concepts away from like shell item, shell section, shell content, because I find it quite hard to maintain what each one does in my head. And if they just change it to item, I think that's going to be a big win. That was part of my feedback, yeah. So David Ortnell, the program manager, gave me a few different perspectives, and that was definitely the one that I was preferring. Yep.
So were you saying the item is the flyout menu, and then the section is tabs at the bottom, and then the other one would be the tabs at the top? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, okay. But it depends on the depth and the amount. So because I only have one shell section here, I don't have bottom tabs. So it just depends on how much you mix and match.
So they have to be in a kind of tree structure for it to
yep.
kind of format like that. You can just say you just wanted a bottom bar with none of the stuff that was inside it.
You can override the behavior. So there's behavior. So there's flyout behavior, and I think there's another one for tab behavior. And you can forcefully override what you want it to do. Yep.
Can we have nested navigation systems like a flyout, and within one of the flyout pages, can we have that?
Can we have nested navigation systems? I haven't tried it. Possibly. You could definitely make a flyout option push to another modal page, which is a shell.
You mentioned before that iOS Android looking the same.
Yep.
What is that related to?
Oh, so there's a feature called visual. So being able to make Android and iOS look the same.
Is that like all the components, everything?
Yep.
That you see?
Yeah. I'll find the slide.
Only 4 components so far, but they're working on more.
What are the 4?
Progress bar, entry, frame,
Right.
and button.
That's what.
But David assures me the date picker's on the way.
I know it's here somewhere. These are his slides. I don't know.
But yeah, what about the tabs and all that kind of stuff that you're showing us here?
Yep.
Is that going to be, will that look the same?
It should. That's I guess the selling point of visual. Why they make it? Why they're making it. So.
For navigation, so pattern the share is used the URL navigation. So if I don't want to use this kind of navigation, or I want to combine with the content framework like the Vision view module navigation.
Yep. So to my knowledge, it doesn't support mixing and matching with the frameworks at the moment. So if you wanted to use like Prism or FreshMVM's like view model first approach, Shell is probably not for you at the moment, at least until the framework authors catch up. Yeah, and I know they're considering the framework, like these framework authors, from comments that I've had from the team. So, yeah.
Now, Matthew.
Yep.
We have pizzas have arrived, so there's no more questions at this statement. Thank you, Matthew. That was excellent. Now, please help yourself to pizzas. There's no drinks. Sorry, there's just water. Sorry about that. It's a muck up by the organisers, me. And make sure this is a networking session, so make sure you talk to someone you haven't spoken to before.